Hey, Freedom Church, we are kicking off a brand new series today that I am super excited about. I really do believe that God is going to use this series to both encourage you and challenge you to be able to continue taking the steps of faith that we need to take so that we can see at increasingly higher levels how good and trustworthy God really is. Now today, I got a special treat. I've asked my friend Pete Hixson to be with us to kick off this series. He's been here several times. He's done an amazing job. God has used him in the life of our church, but he's also used him in my life personally for years and years and years. Devin and I, we love him and his family, and it is always an honor to be able to have him with us. So do me a huge favor and let's put our hands together for Pete Hixson.
All right. Well, good morning, Freedom Church. Yeah, so good to see you. So good to be back up here, and we love being a part. This is usually the service that we're at when we're in town, so we're kind of out there, and it's been several weeks since I've had the privilege to speak and teach here, but I love it every time. Our family feels so grateful to be a part of Freedom Church, and you are a huge part of that. We're in love with the people and our leadership and just what God is doing here, so thank you. Today, we are kicking off a brand new series, and so for those of you that are watching and in the room, we're kicking off a series called Secure the Bag. Over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about money and how to do money God's way. Now, I realize when I say money and we're in church, everybody's kind of like, nyeh, you know what I mean? It's kind of like this, what? But here's what I want to do to just set the stage today. First of all, I want to remind us of something, and I say this to encourage you, which is this. You and I live in God's world. God does not live in our world. And I'm thankful for that. There's a lot of times I don't see it that way. I don't want it that way. I think I don't want it that way, but what I always find out is I do want it that way. That we live in God's world. He doesn't live in our world. And his world includes everything. Time, relationships, how we manage our skills, the things that he's given us. I mean, there's so much in this world. Now, God gave the riskiest gift of all with free will. So you and I have the free will to run around and break things, which we do quite a bit, right? And yet God, in his own incredible power and grace and love, always, continually, never-ending, provides his unconditional love, supply, provision, and a new way, even out of the way that we broke, which wasn't the original way. You see what I'm saying? God is good. This is his world. And there is so many aspects that could be applied to what I want to share today, but we're in a topic of money. We're in topic of this. Why? Because this is an important part of life. Sometimes the message series is about relationships. Sometimes it's about how do we handle the things and troubles and trials that come our way because they're coming. This is about something very practical, but I also believe it's supernatural. This is something that God cares about because he knows that you and I need money to live in this life, right? Like it's just a part of the operating world. So how do we secure the bag? You've heard that phrase before. That means I got to get mine. I got to secure mine. I got to make sure I've got it, right? That's just a phrase like let's secure the bag. And here's what I want to talk about today. This is a message that I think from God to you and me, and it's this. This is what I think he wants to say to us. Don't worry, trust me. Don't worry, trust me. Now, some of you had that middle school friend that used to tell you that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, don't worry, trust me. I had this buddy of mine. I've told on him all three services now. His name was Matt Wilson. He was my best friend growing up. He used to always get us into a lot of trouble. The truth is, he's probably telling everybody else, because he's a pastor as well, that I was the guy that got us into trouble. And he might be right, but I like to tell it this way. He always was like, hey, let's go do this. We got to, let's go. And then, we find ourselves in trouble, Don't worry, trust me. But this message isn't from my buddy Matt Wilson, or this message, this right here is not from me. This is from God. Why does he give us this message when it comes to money? We're going to see his literal words through Jesus in a moment. because he knows that you and I spend a lot of time worrying when it comes to money. We just do. We just spend a lot of time. And what we want is to secure this bag. What I think we all want out of finances, out of money, is we want to be secure. Now, why do we want to be secure? What are our motives of it? What are the priorities of having it? It could be different. For some, it's because we want to make good investments. And I don't just mean in banks, I mean in people and in things. You invest in something, which means you give of something valuable to you and hope that it grows. You plant a seed in something and you hope that it grows. You give to someone in something financially, right? So that you hope that it, in the business world, it's ROI, it's a return on investment. What will I get out of what I put into this? Same thing with our relationships and time and all this. But remember, we're in a series of money. How do we handle it? God's way. It's very important. But some of us want security, and so we want to invest more. Or maybe we want to open up more accounts. And life goes on, and life gets busier and crazier. So it's like, we got to have this account and that account and that account. Maybe I can open up this account. And maybe it's not, again, literal bank accounts, but we have different places where we deposit this. Some of us want to make sure that we're secure in our money so we can just buy more stuff, right? I mean, some of us aren't thinking very, how do I say this, like economically. We're just like, I just want money so I can buy whatever it is I want to buy, right? It depends on maybe our age or season of life or whatever it is. Others just want to make sure that we are secure in our finances because I want to save up for the what? The rainy day. The rainy day is coming. And there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. There's nothing wrong with money itself. It's how we view money and what we do with money that turns out to be the problem. Some of us just go, hey, I just want to accumulate it. It's funny, I have my youngest daughter here. She's 18, and a few years ago, I took her to the bank. We opened up a bank account. We put some money in there, and she works and has worked. She's always been incredibly responsible, and it's been funny, like I'll see her see that bank account go up, and I see her when it goes down. And typically what that means is the Amazon packages go up and the Amazon packages go down. It is different. Our age, it's like, hey, all I got to do is just make sure now I got to get gas in the car. I got to make sure that I can go to wherever my friends want to go, and that's just all I got to worry about. And then life gets a little crazier, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But we all want security out of this thing called money. And so we want to invest more. We want to have more accounts. We want to buy more maybe. We want to save more. We want to accumulate more. I'm not here to tell you today what you should do with the exact dollar amount in your bank account. That's not what this is. I'm here today to remind us that there is another world that we live in, and it's not our world, it's God's world, and we need to be reminded and get a view of what He thinks about it, and then start operating in His way. Will all of our problems go away? No, He promised that we're going to have struggles and problems. Tomorrow, are we going to wake up and we have a brand new this, brand new that? That's not the point. You might, if you do, give me credit. No, I'm just kidding. Let me have some. No, I'm kidding. But the point is, it's not about that. It's just about seeing it God's way. And this is in every area of life. But money's an important one because He knows our tendency. And typically, it's not worrying because we want to be greedy. It's just worrying because we want to make it. And we want to make sure, and we want to whatever the reasons are in all of these listed. But the problem that I find, and I think you do too, is this. It doesn't give us what we were hoping for. No matter what we buy and get, no matter how much we invest and have, no matter how much we accumulate, no matter how much we even save up, there's always a new category of something to pay for. There's always a new thing to buy. There's always a new reason to save up for a rainy day. All of those things are fine and good. And I get this struggle. Trust me, I promise I understand this struggle. But here's the reality. Why do we keep putting our security in something that we worry about so much? Let me ask this again. Why do we keep putting our security in something that we think will give us what we were looking for? Security. And yet we turn around and worry about that very thing so much. So something is unreliable here. Something is not trustworthy here. Something should not gain our trust. And I don't know that it's actually the dollar bill or the coin or what's in the bank account where our trust is. I do think more often we put our trust in us handling it our way rather than trusting God to say, do this my way. I think my trust is a little bit more in me. So therefore, I buy to get and think it's going to satisfy me. Or I save to hopefully for. All of that's good, wise. Remember, sometimes we're teaching a message. I'm not teaching the whole thing right here. We're taking a topic and we're just learning there is a way and it's God's way and it applies to our money. I think our trust is in ourselves. And I think our trust can be in the coin as well, right? What's funny is if you read the coin, what does the coin say? That's right. It says, in God we trust. Coin's like, don't trust in me. Don't put it in my fault, right? You know? The dollar bill's like running around with the presidents or whatever. I'm just kidding. Whatever. Like, don't trust me, you know. But we do. We trust what we're going to do with it. We trust what it's going to give to us. And it's not actually giving it to us. Why? Because I think security to most of us isn't just the number in our account. I think the security of what we're looking for is that I want fulfillment in life. And so for sometimes this is seasons of life, sometimes it's just personality. Some fulfillment is just getting new things. Some fulfillment is saving up, making sure, possibly being overly cautious. It's so funny. I am overly cautious about certain things in my life, and I'm ridiculously reckless in other areas of my life. And my wife, she has every right to make fun of me about this because she's learned we celebrate 25 years of marriage this year. And yes, thank you. I said this in the other service. I'm like, thank you. I'm awesome? No, I don't really know. No, she's awesome to put up with me. But I'm joking. Anyway, when it comes to, her and making fun of me, she can do that. And she always laughs because I'll get a shirt for Christmas and it's still hanging up with the tags on it's summertime. And she's like, why haven't you worn this? She's like, are you saving it for a special? But that's just how I think. I'm like, ooh, I want to, I'll pull these shoes out of the box. I'm overly cautious in some ways. And again, there's wisdom in all of these things. But anything we overly care about, we're going to worry about. The stuff we don't overly care about, we don't worry about it. But we worry about money a lot. So you know what that tells me? We overly care about money. And God has a message for us. It just says, don't worry about that. Just put your trust in me. Put your trust in me. And I really do understand it. We all struggle with this. I mean, can I just say this in church? Life is freaking expensive, isn't it? And it's getting more expensive. I mean, I'm not just talking about the inflation we're dealing with. Have you put gas in your car lately? I mean, stuff that you looked at buying, whether you wanted it or needed it 3 months ago, it's 25% higher if you start shopping again. You need to go buy a house or a car, good luck. I mean, this is, some of you are like, I'm going shopping for a car today. And you're so discouraging. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying life's expensive. And then seasons of life seem to get more expensive. I remember when I was kind of in the place of my daughter, and listen, that is her world right now. It's like, I got to provide this, and I want this, and things that I want. Then you get to adulthood. She just turned 18, so she's an adult, but you get to you have to adult. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. It's I got to this is what adult is, And then you got these little creatures that come along you got to take care of. And then, you used to just think about, I just got to make sure they got a diaper and a few whatever. Now it's cars and clothes and college, and I've got one in college, one going to college, and I'm just saying, life gets expensive. I get this. And then my wife and I argue. Her priority is just we don't really need to get your nails done. She's like, well, yes, I do. And I'm like, she's like, you don't need to go play golf again. I'm like, well, I do want to and need to. It's good for me. Again, this is a good series. Some of you are going to be just jabbing each other. You already done that. This isn't about, again, me telling you exactly what you need to do with what you have. This is just a good reminder to set up that we can trust God in His way when it comes to money. We really can. And I've got some good news for you as we get started. Number one, you're not alone. We all struggle with this. I want you to say on the count of three, I'm not alone. 1, 2, 3. You are not alone. We all struggle with this. Number two, you don't have to worry. I'm about to stomp on something that is a lie of the enemy that even in our Christian, God-fearing worldview, we have adopted, and it's this, that there is no choice, I have to worry. Will we worry? Probably so. Do we have to worry? No, we don't. Most of the time when I'm most worried, I'm inviting God to live in my world instead of accepting His invitation to live in His world. Because in His world, in His worldview, He's saying, operate this way. Will it be without struggles? Absolutely not. He promised struggles. Why? Because there is brokenness all over the world. And I am broken, and I break things, and I hurt things in people, and I hurt myself too, and so do you. That is all a result of actually missing the mark. We throw this word around a lot in church called sin. Sin means to miss the mark. It's not just the bad act that you did. Sin is I've placed my hope and faith and trust in the wrong thing, in the wrong person, in the wrong place. And therefore, I go and do acts that break things. And God is just saying, it's my world, trust me. And when it comes to money, we need to learn how to do that. And we don't have to worry. And then this is my favorite. You can trust God. You really can. You can trust God. Remember, the coin says it too. Just remind yourself, whenever you're starting to worry about money, pull out a dollar bill. Pull out a coin. Oh, okay, there we go. You know, like, I know, pull out your Bible, but still, it says it right there too. You can trust God. You're not alone in this journey. We all struggle with this. You don't have to worry. The enemy will tell you you don't have a choice. You and I do have a choice. Why do I harp on this? Because I struggle with this deeply. You can ask my wife. Again, there's other things I'm like, oh, yeah, you know. And then as I'm getting older, I have this conversation with myself. I'm like, yo, bro, what happened to you? Yeah, that's how I talk to myself. I got a few voices up there. Anyway, that's another issue. But like, what happened to you? Why are you so stressed? Well, I used to be, you know. And I'm like, but the cares of this world accumulate. And I have more failures than I used to have. And I have more disappointments than I used to have. And as I look back and I'm getting older, this is not a discouragement for you younger people. It's just like, you just got more behind you to potentially and temptation to worry about. And therefore, you look through those glasses as you look forward, and we probably need to lean into the younger generation and say, let me look through your glasses forward. I'm going to share my wisdom glasses backward, and then we meet in the middle, and we can operate in this thing called God's way. Yeah, that's a good little plan. Anyway, so I've just learned, and I think that I'm learning that God in His way in all things, but when it comes to money, far more reliable than my way. His way is more peaceful. His way is more truly joyful. I mean, I can get something and be excited about it and happy with it. And you know, you've heard the phrase like the new car smell wears off pretty quick. And some of you are like, well, I want the new car smell, I'll take it. You know, it's like, yeah. but still, it's like, whatever we have, what's sort of the natural reaction when we're putting a little too much hope and overly care in the thing? We want more, and we want another, and we want to, you know, and it's just because we want the thing more than we want the God of the thing. And here's what God is saying: you'll never, ever, ever find fulfillment in that. You'll find fulfillment in me because that's the way I've designed you, and that's why you keep worrying about that. So what is the message that God wants for us? What is His way of money? When Jesus was on this earth, His friends and followers would travel with Him. 4 of them we know by name: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We know more by name, but these are individuals that wrote the first 4 books or the accounts of what we call the Gospels. The New Testament starts with the Gospels, the good news. This is the accounts, the happenings of the life of Jesus while he was here on earth. It's important because he claimed to be God. He died, he was buried, and he was raised to life again, which gives us a pretty good signal that maybe he was exactly who he said that he was, and trustworthy. And so when they would see something, they would write it down, and then it's been passed down and translations and whatever. So one of his friends and followers, Luke, who's a very detailed friend compared to some of the others, he wrote down some very detailed accounts of the life of Jesus. And Jesus went to tell this story one time. He was a masterful teacher because he wouldn't just say, here's 1, 2, 3. He would say, it's kind of like this lady one time who went to this study. We're like, that's kind of like me. It's sort of like this guy, right? He's told stories and parables so we would understand. God is so, quote, difficult to understand on what we think. And what God is saying, I'm really not. So I'm going to come as a person and still God to teach you what I'm like. And that's what Jesus did. One of the things he taught a lot about was money. Why? Because he knew we would worry about it. And he said, let me tell you about this farmer who accumulated a lot of wealth. He built barns and he actually stored his wealth in the barns. Could have been possessions, maybe some tractors. I'm kidding, they didn't have tractors back then. Whatever it was, his wealth might have been in the crops of the field. It might have been literally coins and, had barns. And one day, that wealthy farmer said, I'm going to build more barns, make more money, and store it up. Until he didn't realize the very next day would be his last day on earth, and he died that night. And this is what Jesus said. Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Another version says to not be rich towards God, to not be rich in God. What does that mean? To not be rich in the understanding of how God's way works. We stored up all of our time, energy, wealth, and you can do that. You can. Do I think some people maybe have more of a gift to make more money? Probably. Do I want that gift? Yes. We all do, right? But it's not about that. By the way, I want to level the ground. Some people think like, well, I only worry about money because I don't have very much. Everybody worries about money. The more you have to worry about. There's just different layers and levels of it all, but it's the same concept. And Jesus says this, let me just set the record like right here. Don't be foolish and store up for yourself something that you can't take with you and you really can't, right? Can't make you happy even while you're here anyway, and then you miss the most important thing, which is a relationship with God, God's way. And then he goes into a lesson about money, and he says this, then turning to his disciples, his friends and followers, Jesus said, this is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. He just starts it out knowing what our problem is. Our problem is we worry. We worry because we put so much stock in something that is unreliable. Ourself, the coin, something else, the fulfillment. Whether you have enough food or enough clothes to wear, for life is more than food and your body's more than clothing. Let me pause right there. Some of you are like, no, keep reading. Don't say anything about my clothes. Shh, no, I'm going shopping today. I'm not telling you not to shop. I'm definitely not telling you not to put clothes on the body. For God's sakes, hang some clothes on the body, right? But here's what Jesus is saying. We put more value in what goes on to our body than our own selves. Like as a parent, you would never tell your kids the things you put on your body are more valuable to me than you. God says the things you put so much energy into trying to get are far less valuable than what you're trying to get it for. God is saying, you're so valuable to me. I made you. I'm going to take care of you. So just don't be overly caring about those things. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them, and you're far more valuable to God than any of those birds. Here's a great question. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? Anybody? No. Worry has never done one thing for me, and I bet it hasn't for you. It actually gets me on a cycle, makes me sick. It causes so much internal damage. and I just get, and it changes my worldview and everything else. It actually turns things so inward that life is all about me, whether that's selfishly or whether that's anxiously. And I'm just telling you, life is a short shelf life when it's all about you. It is so less enjoyable. But we have to let go of some things and trust God in his world versus my world. And God, I'll give you a few pieces here and there. And if worry can't even accomplish the little thing, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? Great question, Jesus. Clearly. Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all of his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. Solomon was a well-known figure back then, still today to some, to maybe a lot of us. Solomon was a king. Solomon was the wealthiest man who ever lived. And if he didn't look as pretty as the lilies, then why do we think that all the stuff that he had was going to make him happy or make us happy? Why does Jesus say lilies? I didn't know this about lilies till preparing a little bit for this, and a friend of mine was like, hey, did you know this about lilies? I don't really know flowers, and I'm not an expert in horticulture, but lilies are one of, if not the most, or very, very little maintenance. They just grow and are beautiful because they are. And Jesus says, you are too. Beautiful the way I made you. And I love you. And is there broken stuff around it? And can we make it better or worse? Sure. Another thing, there's stuff that I don't understand about a lot of things. Our family lives in the world of special needs and disabilities. My oldest daughter, our first little girl, was born. Went into respiratory distress, stopped breathing, caused a gap in her brain. I don't understand all that. Trust me, I struggle with it, still do. Always, I'm not saying no big deal. It's what's really beautiful, it's all I know is this. God says to me about that too, don't worry, trust me. And I made these people and I made these things and they're beautiful. You know what's funny about birds and we're talking about flowers is I kind of make fun of my parents because I'm my dad would be like, oh, they have these birds. We watch birds in the backyard. Or we go and these flowers, and I used to think that's so boring. And the older I'm getting, I'm like, honey, did you hear that bird? That's so pretty. It's so pretty. Oh, look at that flower. I took you out in the backyard the other day, and I was like, look, this bush is blooming, and it's like a pink purplish. And I'm like, who am I? What's going on? But I just see the earth around me, and I just see beautiful things that I had nothing to do with. The most impacting trip I've ever been on was we went to East Africa and we did some mission work and then we went out and did a safari. You'd think it was the mission work. It was very impacting. You know what was the most impacting? We went to a place where people had zero control or ingenuity and created nothing. It was all God's natural stuff happening. And I was like, whoa, this is God's way. This is like earth operating the way that he wanted it, but he gave us this free will. And all of that to say, if we look around at ourselves, not what other people tell us we should think about each other, and not what the media or our thoughts or our fears or our judgment should tell us, we'll see a lot of beautiful people too. The earth is beautiful. God made it for us, and he made each of us. And if God cares so wonderfully for the flowers and you and me and here today, thrown on fire, why? He will certainly care for you. Why do you have such little faith? We have so much faith in the coin, in the dollar, in how I manage it, in the fulfillment we hope it'll bring us, in such little faith in God. Jesus says, don't be concerned about what to eat, what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world, but your Father already knows your needs. Another translation says, you know both God and how he works. Really, they're saying, you know better. There are people who have no concept of God, and they worry, and they maybe should because they don't know God. You and I, we know about God. Shame on you, you know better. Trust him. A little parently there today. I'm like, you know what? I just feel like this is just the loving voice that I need to hear from God sometimes. I got to be reminded, hey, son, I don't live in your world, you live in mine. And that's not a mean, wrongly abused, authoritarian voice. That's a fatherly voice saying, I got you. I love you. And you're just spinning all these wheels worried about stuff that is taking you nowhere. Trust me. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. What is the kingdom of God? Glad you asked. God's way through God's people in God's place. It's God's way. What is the kingdom? We don't speak in terms of welcome to my kingdom, like some do maybe or other countries, but like here we don't really say that, like walk into my house, welcome to my kingdom, or like to our city, welcome to our city, welcome to my kingdom, No. But a kingdom is kind of a place, like we think of it as a place where people live. What a kingdom really is an economy, a way of things, how it works. God has invited us to live and to operate in, and he's actually handed us the keys, to his kingdom, his way. And we can become anyone and everyone, his people, in his place. Like this is the way that he's invited us to live. So don't be afraid, little flock. I love how Jesus is like, I know, isn't that all? Like, I know, it's like, oh, man, whatever. Like, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and we had goats. We didn't have sheep, but goats and sheep sort of have some, like, they're sweet. The sheep seem to be sweeter and everything, But, like, if you've ever been around them, they also can be easily, like, jolted, like, super skittish, and like, And I think this is just what Jesus is saying. It's like, when it comes to money, why do you get like that? They also get a little not smart with their decisions. And Jesus is like, why do you get like that? Why are you so worried, little flock? I just feel like we just stepped into one of those golden books, like, I know. For it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. I mean, he gave it to us. Yes, he did. And for some of you out there, you're like, I'm having the most difficult financial time of my life. This doesn't feel like he's handed me the keys to anything. I can understand that. The struggles that our family has been through over the past several years, not just the pandemic. Actually, it happened pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic hit, and it doubled it. And it's like, oh my goodness, we were in a literal physical move, moving back here, which we were thankful to come back to Georgia, where we raised the girls, but we were gone for a while. A career move. I was a pastor in a church for many years, and then career transition happened with some things that I didn't want it to go that way, just misalignment of some leadership, and it is what it is, and God is still good, and I'm just being very vulnerable with you. I didn't plan on doing anything else. Now I do some speaking, some business coaching, I do some marketing and work in the special needs organizations. We have one that we've started, one that I work with. My wife's like, you got like 7 jobs. I'm like, I really do have 7 jobs. But let me just tell you, when you're in a transition and upside down, and if you've ever lost your income, you lose healthcare, you lose this, it's like, whoa, I understand this. And let me tell you, some of the stuff that went out the door first was stuff that I used to be a more easily and readily trusting God with. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoosh, got to get tight, you know what? It didn't really work out for me. Why? Jesus is about to tell us why the problems we have with money. And it's this: sell your possessions and give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. He's not literally saying get rid of everything you have today. Remember, he's telling us a story. Here's what he's saying. You are so consumed and concerned and overly cautious and overly careful with everything of securing your bag. You get yours. You go do your thing. You, this. He said, you need to store up treasures in heaven. What's in heaven? The purses of heaven never get old and don't develop holes. Do you know why we never find the fulfillment out of money that we think we will, and we're always worried about it? Because our purses got holes in them. And it just keeps seeping out. And they wear out. It's never enough. So what do? We buy bigger purses. We get more stuff. By the way, ladies, can I just say something about purses real quick? They used to be literally a thing. Like when Jesus' time, it'd be like, you just keep your money here. Now it's like, You keep your money here. You keep your makeup here. You keep your children inside these things. I mean, I swear to God, we go to the grocery store. I'm like, honey, we're not going on a trip. She's like, I know, I just got my purse. And I'm just like, well, are you just going to put the groceries in there? Because that thing is huge. It's so big. It's like this big. But we do that, and I'm not just talking about bigger things, and it's not just the material thing, it's the heart of the thing. We think it's going to give us what we are always hoping for, and it doesn't. Why? Because it's got holes in it. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to be like, he used to give me money, and he'd say, son, a fool and his money will soon part. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Thanks for the money, I'm going to go buy ice cream. And he's kind of like, that's exactly what I mean. Everything I give you, you just spend it right away. And he's like, you got holes in your pockets? The way we do money on our own without God, it's holes in the purses that we're putting it in. And they wear out. Watch this. Your treasure will be safe. That's how you secure the bag. You do it God's way. What are we really looking for out of security? We're looking for fulfillment. We're looking for meaning. We're looking for purpose. Whatever that is. It's like sometimes my purpose and meaning, fulfillment is to make sure I have it, make sure I have enough. But our focus, our attention, and ultimately our trust is not in God at that time. It's in the money. And Jesus said it's because you're putting it in purses that got holes in them. Store up treasures in heaven. Nobody can take it away. No one can steal your joy. No moth will destroy it. Nothing will make it worse. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be. Do you know what, to find out what is it in life that I really value and want? Wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. If you're not satisfied with that, move your treasure. Amen. Jesus said, I have a good idea. Put it in kingdom things. What is kingdom things? Kingdom things means doing it God's way. Part of that is my house, my car, my bills, right? I'm not telling you to quit your job and not be responsible. For God's sakes, that's not at all what I'm saying. Remember, we're just talking about God's view of it all. And God's kingdom involves all of those things, but it also involves something far greater than you. That's the investment. That's the give. That's the generous. We see God do far more with our stuff than you and I can do with it. So why don't we trust him with all of it? That's really the message Jesus is trying to get across to us. And you might be asking this good question. Can't I rely on both God and money? Good question. Jesus' response, no one can serve two masters. For you will hate the one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve God and be enslaved to money. It's a great question. Got to have money to live on this earth. I know I got to have God in my world, but that's when I'm operating in Pete's world, inviting God to be a part of it. And he said, what will happen is you can't be enslaved to money. That could mean debt. That also just could mean obsession. By the way, people who are obsessed with money are not just people who have money. A lot of times it's people who don't have money because they think, oh, if I only had, if I could, if I will, and one day I will. It's not going to give you what you're looking for. And Jesus just says, trust me. And when you try to live in both of those places, trust in God and trust in whatever it is I'm looking for in money, it's just not going to work. So God says, trust me. I care about you. Remember the lilies. Remember the birds. Remember the ravens. Remember, they don't worry about these things, and they look beautiful. And I take good care of them. It's really valuable to us. So here's what I want to encourage us today. Why do we do money God's way? Because God's way is worry-free. Does it mean I'll never worry again, Pete? No. But if we do, it's our choice. We don't have to worry. Remember, sometimes, too, about to sell the possessions and give, one of the beautiful things about giving is the less I have, the less I have to manage, the less I have to manage, the less I worry about it. It's worry-free. He's just saying the kingdom of God, the way of God is not the way of worry. So choose the way of God. That's a mouthful. That's a heartful. That's so scary sometimes. God's way is a guarantee. I told you a little bit ago in business world or something like ROI. What's my return on investment? What do I get out of this? Let me just tell you, when you manage money, live money, whatever it is, we got to have it, and we live and operate in it. When we do it God's way, it's a guarantee that it cannot be stolen away. The joy can't be stolen. And nothing can destroy it. And we're not putting it in purses that have holes in them or that wear out, because we're doing it God's way. And then God's way is just trustworthy. It's trustworthy because He is trustworthy. God is trustworthy. He loves you. He cares about you. He loves you so much more than money. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't want your money. He wants your heart. He wants your life. He doesn't need your time. He doesn't just want your time. He wants you. And when He gets you, He gets all of that. And we operate in His kingdom. And guess what? That's not just good for you. That's good for people around you. That's His design. And because of that, it's actually good for you. And you live outside of yourself, and you actually enjoy life rather than just muster through every day. We can trust Him because He is trustworthy. He sent His Son, Jesus, to die on a cross. Jesus said that was going to happen. People thought He was crazy. And then hundreds and hundreds of people saw Him back in that moment after He was buried and dead and gone, alive again. Before His disciples and followers saw Him alive again, they were fearful and timid, and they fled. But the moment they saw Him, that's where their faith came. And they literally ended up giving their lives for Him because they said, I believe. I believe. Hey, you can trust God with your money. You can trust Him with your time. You can trust Him with your relationships. You can trust Him with the future of wherever you're going next in life. Because He's trustworthy. No one is more trustworthy than God of your life. If today you've never even entered a relationship with God. Remember Jesus' words? He said, don't be foolish on this earth and accumulate. Maybe it's not just wealth. Maybe it's just happiness and fulfillment or whatever, and not be rich in a relationship with God. If you've never entered into a relationship with God, it's really simple. You just say, God, I want that. I mean, right now you can say in your own heart, God, I am sorry. I have put my wealth and trust, meaning not just my money, but like every bit of me, my trust was missing the mark in this person, this thing, myself, whatever. And it didn't bring me that. God, I choose to trust in you, Jesus. Trust in you, Jesus. And what you did on the cross, you died for me, you rose again, and I believe you. I want you in my life. I want a relationship with you. You can have that today. That's the bag you want to secure. And when God secures that, as you secure God, oh my God. Right? It's a much better way to live. It's not free of trials, but you can trust God. I encourage you, trust Him with your life today. Trust Him with your money. He's trustworthy. Don't worry. Trust God. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for your faithfulness to us. We only love you because you first loved us, and we are so grateful for that. You're so patient with us too. You teach us this. I feel like I've heard this message in my own heart so many times, and I've succeeded and experienced, and then I've failed again. God, I confess that, but I also confess that you are real, you are true, and I just pray that all of us will literally trust you with our whole lives. For those that have never placed their faith in you, maybe today is the day they just say, I have missed the mark of where my trust is. Today I put it in you, God, and I ask you to speak to me personally. And I know that you will do that, Lord, because you are faithful and you are good, and you desire this more than we do. In Jesus' name.